We want to welcome our guest coach for this evening. It is Women's International Master Dr. Denise Bouah. For those unfamiliar with Denise Bouah, she has represented South Africa at the Olympiad quite a few times. I'm not sure how many times, perhaps Denise will tell us. I think it's 4 times. Am I correct, Denise?
7 times.
7 times. Oh, okay. So seven is the perfect number, but let's hope that she doesn't stop there at the number 7. Denise is also a multiple South African champion, and she has an impeccable record. She looks young at heart, but she has a wealth of experience, and she's also a top coach as well as a psychologist who recently launched a book on sports psychology for children. So Denise will introduce the topic for this evening, and you guys may have fun. Thank you, Denise. Over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. I just want to check, can you see my video? Because I can't see anybody's videos. Or I just want to know, Andrew, maybe you can just indicate to me.
Yeah, we can see your video.
Okay.
The rest, we normally switch off our cameras and so forth, and we unmute when we responding accordingly.
Okay, so you don't need me to switch my camera off.
No. And the session is being recorded, so the link will be shared afterwards.
Okay, super. All right, so
thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andrew and Burton and everybody for having me tonight. Please feel free to unmute yourself at any stage if you have a question, if you want to say something. I'd rather have it interactive than that you sit with a question in your mind and you never ask it. And if I do not know the answer, I will find the answer for you, or we can problem solve together. So tonight we cover an interesting topic. I was quite surprised with the topic. So the topic is Zugzwang, and we will be having some fun with that. It is an interesting one. I think, you know, just as well as I do, that the action on the board happens with all the moves that we get to make. But sometimes we do not want to make a move. And I'm sure we have all been in that situation where you find yourself on the receiving end of Zugzwang. And doesn't matter what you move, your situation will be worse than if it was not your turn to play. So unfortunately, we do not have the, how can I say, the privilege of just getting up and say to our opponent, we feel like being giving today and you can have another move. You unfortunately have to sit there and make that losing move in a forced manner. So yes, we'll be looking at Zugzwang. First of all, I would just like to say that we are all pronouncing the word wrong. It's a German word that first came to into the English dictionary in about 1906, 1904 by Emanuel Lasker, as you will know, is a world champion. And it's actually pronounced Zugzwang. So Zug in German is a move, and Zwang means to be forced. So it's a forced move. So the Z in German is spelled, is said Z. But it would be very funny if we all go around talking about Zugzwang. It takes a long time to say it. So I will just be using our slang Zugzwang tonight. But just know that that is a correct pronunciation for the word. So Lasker came up with the word, and then, as you know, Nimzowitsch in his book, My System, he actually made it famous. So I hope some of you have studied My System and maybe have moved on to Chess Praxis, which was a follow-up on the My System book of Nimzowitsch. If you haven't done that book yet, see if you can find a copy, and because it's really good for positional understanding in chess. So I can really recommend that. Some of the stuff you might find basic, especially on the level that you are playing already. Especially if it starts talking about easy things like opposition and double pawns and isolated pawns, and explains those terms. But there are other things that I think is quite important to understand as a chess player that is only in My System. So have a look at that. But even though the term was only coined in 1904 or 6, they used Zugzwang already centuries earlier on. So it was actually the first time you can actually see that in a game was in the 1600s. And also in Shatranj, which is the Chinese chess game, you can actually find Zugzwang as well, and that's over 1,000 years ago. So it's not a new term from the last century. It's been around, and tonight we will just look at it in a little bit more detail. So we're going to run through a few things. First of all, I'm just going to run through some of the theory of Zugzwang, if there can be any theory on it. It's not easy to find. We've got over 1,000 chess books here at home, and none of them has a chapter on Zugzwang. It is something you pick up here and there in an end game. Maybe they'll mention something in a middle game, but it's not something that you can just go study in a textbook. It just doesn't exist. So Lasker he actually thought Zugzwang is actually quite important, and he wrote about that in his book Common Sense in Chess. And he said there are 3 things about the end game which is actually quite important. That's when your king becomes very powerful, when you have to look at the pawn structure because they are passed pawns. And the third thing he actually found very important was Zugzwang. So he's the first world champion to actually really give credence to that. So there are a few things that you can look out for in a game that can make Zugzwang possible. First of all, you can look for that if there are pieces on the board that do not have a lot of squares to go to. So we'll talk about immobile pieces. Sometimes we can trap them, or we can force a position in such a way that it's only that piece that can still move. And if that piece moves, it loses itself. That's the one thing. And then the other thing is also when you have developed your pieces to their best squares, they cannot improve much further. And then when you have to start making moves from that position, every move just makes your situation worse. That can lead to a loss. And then the third one that we have to look for is overloaded pieces. Pieces that are protecting more squares or pieces than they can actually deal with. And those are the pieces that we want to target as well, because if they have to do too much work, it's easy to give that piece a kick that he has to move somewhere else, and then the piece that he was defending will be lost. So those are the 3 big things that can lead to Zugzwang. It's a very powerful tool to use. You will find it mostly in endgames, a little bit in the middle games. I found a few middle game positions that has Zugzwang theme in it. We'll look at that. And then most of the times, never in the opening. Although I found 2 games I will show you that introduces a new term to Zugzwang, which is not really recognized, but it might just give you some ideas in your own games. So basically, that is the background for us for tonight. And I think you have received the outline for the session. I've compiled quite a few positions and games that we can look at tonight. If we do not get through all of them, they will be on Lichess for you to access, and you can go and have a look there as well. So we're going to do a basic, just to run through it, we're going to look at a few basic Zugzwang game ideas, positions, just some basic stuff that I'm sure you will all solve easily. And then we're going to continue and check for Zugzwang and checkmating ideas, where Zugzwang actually can lead to a checkmate. Then we'll be looking at winning endgames, where the Zugzwang theme is used. And then we'll be moving on to Zugzwang in the middle game and see where that leads us. So we will be looking at some really famous games. And then we also look at Zugzwang moving in with a transition from the middle game to the end game. We'll look at 2 positions there. And then I will be chatting to you about Zugzwang Light. There's a light version of Zugzwang, which I also did not know until Jonathan Rowson from England wrote about that, and he introduced the concept. So I will just briefly show you that mostly happens in the opening of all things. So, and I'm sure that you have been in Zugzwang Light in the opening already and just didn't know it. So I'll just show you what that is, and then you can also pay attention to that in your own games. And then lastly, there's some puzzles to solve for you, but we will be solving puzzles throughout the session tonight. I'm not just going to show you stuff, because I think it's good to get your brain working as well on Zugzwang. All right, so if there's no questions, then we can continue. So please unmute yourself if you have any questions, then we'll see to that. I'm going to share my screen in Lichess with you. Let me just do that. And I'm going to cover this as much as I can with this because I have not been able to delete the games next to it, the move order, so that you can see that. Okay, so I thought we'll start with the most basic Zugzwang position, and I'm sure you have come across this one. I thought let's just start with the easy one. Obviously, if black moves, he will lose because I'll just put this away. Okay, sorry. Let me find my squares. Okay, so if the king goes here, then this king will simply move there and the pawn will be escorted through. Okay, so I don't think we'll have to move that. You will know how that works. So this is a basic Zugzwang position. White is also in Zugzwang. If it was white's turn to move, then obviously you either have to move away from the pawn, losing the pawn, or you actually have to move to king c6 and that will be a draw. So white is also in Zugzwang. If it's white's turn to play, we will call this mutual Zugzwang, or another word for it is reciprocal Zugzwang. So there's two names for that. It's good to know this as well. We play through this without sometimes recognizing that it's actually a type of Zugzwang. All right, so that is just for introduction. I'll just move on here. Sorry, I just want to let this move on. Okay. Sorry, we're going to start with this one. Okay, so this is another basic idea. Sometimes it is your opponent's move. And again, this is a basic one. I'm just going to run through this because not everybody has seen it. It is black's turn to play here. Black can only move the pawn. And as you all will see, the knight just hops in for the checkmate. So this is obviously the bad side of having a rook pawn. They are not always easy to get through to the other side, but just an elementary form of Zugzwang for you there as well. Another simple, easy one. So it doesn't matter what black does, he will lose the bishop because the king has to move here. The bishop is pinned on the rook, with the rook. So any king move, and obviously white will just capture the bishop. I know this is easy for some of you, but I thought we will ease into it. Right, this is another form of reciprocal Zugzwang, mutual Zugzwang, also known as knight move opposition. I've come across this in one of my games already. You think you'll never come across these type of stuff, but they do happen. And I think termed or maybe joined with Zugzwang is also the term mind squares or corresponding squares. So in this situation, you will actually have this square and this square, sorry, this square and that square. These are corresponding squares. So whenever somebody moves onto f5, for example, and the other king moves onto d6, then obviously they are corresponding to each other because suddenly they are in a relationship, and this relationship is called Zugzwang. So whoever moves here will lose. If black moves away, white will capture the pawn, and if white moves away, black will capture his pawn. All right, so those are the easy ones out of the way, and we will move on to the more complicated ones. Are we still all here with this? Because I can't see you, so I cannot see your reactions. I'll take it that we are all on board. Right.
Yes, we are on board.
Okay. So moving on to a little bit of a more complicated one. I loved this position when I saw it at first, because normally when you sit with knights on the board, we all want to just shout out it's a draw and we want to call the arbiter over. But in this case, it is not a draw because there are other pieces that can move as well. In this case, two black knights. So ideally, we would like to put black into Zugzwang because as you can see, the king is already quite stuck there on the side of the board because you cannot go to those squares because the knight is already protecting there. So actually, we just need one checkmate move and the king will be will be stuck. So, but we need to put black in Zugzwang because he can move 2 knights already at the same time. He can move this knight as well. And that will open up the square for the king to actually go to. So we need to be vigilant in terms of that. Is there anybody that would like to venture for answer with this position? That can just see it out of the top of their heads. How you can put black in Zugzwang so that you can actually deliver mate.
King H8.
Say again?
King H8.
King H8. And your idea
Then
is?
the king. Well, the idea is that your knight to E6 or knight to G6 will be made depending on which knight they move.
Yes. So let's move this knight.
Then it's knight
that,
to E6.
Yes, that makes that square available, would be mate, well spotted. And if we move the other knight, say for example, there where it cannot be captured, then your mate would be?
Knight to D6.
Knight to?
D6.
Right. So that is again mate. So it is important to also just look for these extraordinary positions where we would normally just default to a draw. Maybe you think the last pawn was just captured, but there are actually possibilities. So I'll spot it with that one. That was quite quick. All right, let's move on to the next one. So here we have another possibility of mate. So we have some key characteristics in the position. The king is already on the side of the board because the rook is doing a great job down the 7th rank. So we just need to find a way to actually get black into a Zugzwang position. Any ideas? It's a mate in 3. Okay, so I'm going to give you the first move in this one. So first move.
Rook B7.
Rook D7.
Rook B7.
B7.
Yeah, attacking the knight there first.
Black can either move the knight or you can still move the king to that square. So let's say we move the king there. Mate in 2. Is it possible?
Yeah, sorry, Denise. Is it possible you could hide the answer on the right there because we see moves? If you click that menu button in the bottom right, it will just hide the notation from us. Like that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, on my screen, I can't see it. So I'm just taking that you can see my screen with where I've covered it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You guys mustn't peek. For your own sake. Okay, every time I'll hide it very quickly, but just don't look there when I change. First move is Rook D7, Andrew, because if you go to B7, the knight can move and the king has a move as well. So the king is not, black is not in Zugzwang because he still has options. He's losing, but he's got options. If you play to Rook D7, there's only one option. The king cannot make any moves, so only the knight can move. So, for example, if the knight captures the rook, then we will play. Anybody has an idea? That's all the answer already.
Knight C6.
Knight C6. And again, the knight has to move, and you follow it up with knight F6 mate. So it kind of links to the previous position. Okay, so the next one I will cover up very quickly for you, since our mating ones. Okay, so this one, white is obviously winning, and that's the thing with all the positions that we normally look at, tactically wise as well. You sometimes look at the position and go like, but white wins in any event, so why must I do it in a certain amount of moves or use a certain theme? But the idea is to actually spot the themes in these type of positions. So it is black to move here. Black is in Zugzwang. Obviously, the king cannot move. So sometimes the authors will tell you that the king is in Zugzwang because the king simply cannot move. So one thing you have to look out for in this position is this diagonal. So be careful to keep the king on the same diagonal, because you have the bishop that can go to g1, and then you'll lose your queen and draw. So that's the only thing that you have to look out for in this position. So white has to move and put black in real Zugzwang. So I gave you one thing that you have to look out for in this one. It's a diagonal. I'm not going to stand too long on it because it's not really a training exercise, merely just to illustrate and just to see if you can spot it quickly. So
Denise, Denise,
yeah,
there's also in the chat, people sometimes type in the chat, so there's a comment in the chat.
yes.
I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, that's the one I also wanted to say, is that if you move your king to a certain position, then your opponent ends up giving you a check. And if you get rid of all his pieces, then that can also be a stalemate. So watch out for squares where you can go to and the opponent actually just gives you a check. So in this case, you can move actually, well, king, in this situation, the king went to d5. And it's just something I'd like to mention here is if you play against a bishop, it's sometimes a good idea to just, if you're not sure, put a king or your pieces on opposite color square, because then you know you cannot run into any funny tactics. And then you know you just got some peace of mind at least. So king d5, and now there's a range of possibilities. You can see for yourself what happens if black plays bishop g1, where your mate is then.
Queen takes f3, yeah.
Let's find another move for black. Let's move back. Bishop takes g3. Mate will be?
Knight takes c3.
Knight takes g3. Any knight move will be simple. That will just be queen takes h2. So sometimes you have to spot the mate before you see the pattern, and then you work backwards. So okay, this is an easy one to spot it quite quickly, but it's this position I've come across in quite a number of tactical endgame books. They like to give this one, so it's actually a very pretty one to play. It's white to move. Any suggestions?
Let's just put his rook anywhere in the H file.
Okay, let's go anywhere. Rook h2. Black can play h6 maybe?
No. No. How about rook h6?
Yes, because of h6. If you play rook h1, for example, anywhere
Okay.
after h6, then it's a bit of a struggle. But if you take that square away, sorry, then black has a serious problem, because if you move the bishop away, then you've got mate in one. If you capture, you've got that mate. And that's about the options. So black is in Zugzwang. So these are important concepts to spot, especially if you find yourself in an endgame that you're supposed to win, but rook versus bishop sometimes can be tricky. And then finally you spot a pattern that you've noticed before, and you know that can lead to Zugzwang, and you can actually introduce that. So this is just one of those cases. If you miss it one move, then you might sit for another 20 or odd moves, and you don't want to risk playing for a draw, or you might have some time trouble as well. So this is one of those situations I've just mentioned where you actually have a winning endgame. Queen versus rook should be a win with accurate play. There's a pawn on the board, but you need to get rid of that pawn first, or try and see if you can win the rook. And in this situation, it doesn't look like you can get into Zugzwang immediately. You can't, but you can try and set that up for yourself. So this is a bit of a tricky one, but I'm just going to leave you for a second to just have a look at it, to just let it sink in, and then we'll discuss it quickly. Black moves here. I'm going to give a move for black. Black moved king to d3. In the game, what happened is black played rook f3, and that is a losing move. So I'm going to go through this because there's quite a number of moves, but I want you to see just the idea behind this Zugzwang, because in an endgame, at some point, when we go into an endgame, we don't go into endgames with these grand plans of massive attacks and pawn storms and a sacrifice here and there. In the endgame, we zone it down into these very simple and small things that we're trying to achieve. And we put a bit of pressure here and a bit of pressure there. And at the end of the day, you want to cramp your opponent that it just turns into Zugzwang at some point. If you think of most of your endgames, at some point you lead the winning ones, you lead your opponent into a position where he has to make a move and it's going to be a losing one. It's a simple case of Zugzwang. And this is one of those that white is probing, and at some point you want to have the king and the rook disconnected from each other, that the king is not protecting the rook, and that's a chance when you actually have that double attack. Doesn't matter what black moves, where he goes with the king, the queen will check the king and the rook and capture the rook afterwards. So that's basically what you want to achieve here. In any endgame where you play with a queen versus a rook, versus a king and a piece, obviously not a queen, but any king and rook, king and bishop, king and knight endgames, you want to create a double attack at the end of the day. That's what we want. So this is what white is aiming for. And in this position, white goes queen g4, check. And as you can see, the king obviously has to go to e3 to protect the rook. And white swings the queen to the other side, which is actually quite a nice idea. Rook goes there to attack the queen. And now the queen just positions itself and wait. So the rook goes back to f3, because where else must the rook go? You are trying to keep an eye on your pawn as well, because you can't deal with a double attack on that. And white then goes queen e5. So we're almost in the same position from earlier, but the queen is closer. King has to move away. Now you either have to go to d3 or to d2, and then you end with your double attack, and you can capture the rook afterwards. So in this case, your Zugzwang would have been this position. Doesn't matter where the king goes, you will lose the rook after that. But it's not always that easy. So if we go to the starting position, if black plays king d3, you can try with queen e5 again. So that's a square you have to go to, because if you go to f3, you're back in that other position where we've been at, where the queen goes here. So just go there. And you have a check. King goes back. Try to stay close to the rook so that they can defend the rook against any double attacks. The queen makes use of the diagonal. Rook tries to cover. And the queen comes back to e5, obviously trying to dislodge the king and the rook from each other. And you lose the pawn. So either way, either going to lose the pawn or you lose the rook, depending on the play. And from here on, we hope that you know how to play with a queen versus a rook, and so that you can checkmate in soon enough before you actually lose with that stalemate rule of making too many moves without capturing a pawn or promoting or checkmating. So this is just one of those positions that you can easily end up checking your opponent, and the opponent just runs around, but you are not finding the double attack and that position that leads to Zugzwang. in order for the opponent to actually lose the rook or the pawn. And in this case, just try to remember, if you're on the receiving end of this, you obviously try to keep the king and the rook close to each other in order to avoid the double attack at the end of the day. So that was just a bit of a complicated one. You actually need a cup of tea with this one and just to sit and play it through. So I would suggest afterwards, when you have time during the week, just try and play through this one and actually make the moves and try out the different variations, because it's a nice one to actually sit through and actually just play through a little bit. Okay, I'm just waiting for the next one to load, and then we're going to go to our games. Okay, so this is a complicated position if you look at it quite quickly. First of all, you've got this pawn that wants to promote on c1, turning into a queen, and then white will just be a piece down. Other element that you have to look for is this king here. This king only has one square to go to. So if we can take this square away, it obviously will be checkmate. Then we also have to look that this queen is under attack from the knight. So we have to keep that in mind. So if you look at this position quickly, you actually just want to play knight to b4 for that, for nice, see if you can get a mate. You know, queen takes here, but that pawn can promote, you can take here. There's some things happening as well. So the knight here is actually a bit of a problem. So in this position, it is white to play. Sorry. White played knight e2 in this position, and then black played here with a check. It's a funny position. It's a very funny position. I'm just making a few moves. I just want to show you what this can lead to. And that can be mate. So the queen is actually a poisoned piece here. And white sees it. That's why he's playing king g2. So I'm going to go through it slowly and you can just look at it. If he takes, you have a check immediately. King has only one square to go to. The next knight comes in. So it doesn't matter what black moves. You're either going to checkmate there, you're going to checkmate there. Because you have to open up a square for the king. And it's either going to be this one or this one. Take your pick. If you open this square, the knight checkmates on that square. If then this knight moves, then you checkmate on b6. So there's more into the position than just what meets the eye. So knight e2 is placed because of that square that you want to go to. The knight comes in. King goes there. And black is now going to play something different. He says, I will leave the knight, the queen, and just play the knight here. Because we open up a square for the king to go to. So the king has some breathing space. Queen comes closer because we're chasing the king to the side. Only one move. Any ideas? That's the easy one because the pieces are not, they're not connected. So if your pieces are not working together, you're open for some funny attacks and a normally double attack. So we're not taking the knight, we'd rather go for the mate. Check there first, goes back. Another loose piece on e4, drops. You can also just play for the mate. And that would be an easy one for you to spot. So if we go back to the beginning, when I first saw the position, it actually made me feel uncomfortable. I don't like positions like this because there's a lot that can happen if you're not with it. And these type of positions normally happen towards the end and we do not have a lot of time on your clock. So it's important to be able to spot the moves. And normally in these forcing variations, it's all Zugzwang, and you can have a Zugzwang position move after move. And with every move that you make, in this case black, his position just worsens and worsens. So I've put a few analysis, few sidelines there for you that you can also play through later, because there's a lot of permutations. The knights can go to a lot of squares if you are playing black. And then you always have the option of the pawn queening on c1 and then seeing what happens there. But I think here white shows very nicely how you can bring those two knights closer and actually end up with a winning attack, because the king is boxed in. And normally when pieces are boxed in, there's always a possibility for Zugzwang, because at some point the pieces will run out of squares, and in this case the king. They say sometimes, there's a nice saying that says that Zugzwang is often worse than checkmate, because it's a psychological, emotional thing that you have to sit with for quite a few moves, and you just cannot get out of it. So it's a nice technique to use. Last position before we go on to some of our games is this one. And this one I'm going to leave to you to see if you can spot this one. This is white to play, and white is moving up, and you should be able to spot this one rather easily. So with one move, how can you put black into Zugzwang? We've always learned as kids that the knight in the center has a lot of squares it can go to, 8 of them in total. And because of that, you can have a lot of forks, because the knight has a lot of squares to cover. And especially with the king.
I think the moves king h1, so the bishop can't move anyway because the knight will fork with the king and bishop.
Okay, so we go king h1, and then what can black play?
Black can't move the bishop because there's a lot of knight forks, and if black takes the knight, you can go queen with h6, a6.
Okay, so come up with a move for white, best move for white. For black, sorry, best move for black.
Any bishop move leads to a fork.
And also, if you want to move the king, because you are thinking of coming in this way, the moment you move there, then that square becomes available for a fork as well. So the king also cannot move, and you also can't bring the king backwards because the pawn will run away. So yes, you've spotted it correctly. Any move where the bishop goes, there will be a fork. So another idea here, just to show you, is if white plays a6, it will just take you a move longer, because after h1 you'll have to take it with the king, and then you can go into that scenario. Do I need to show all the forks, or are we good? Just an example. Check. Obviously the king might go and capture this pawn, but you will obviously capture here and make your way back in time to protect this pawn and capture that pawn with the king. So, and then with the knight's help, you will be able to take the pawn through to the other side. So I actually like this position. It's a you know, if you miss this because you are playing fast, you know, then it's not, you know, this is not the situation you want to end up with, and you miss it, and then you end up drawing because the opponent took a pawn, or promoted because you ran somewhere with a king or a knight and you moved off the square. Because in this position, if you're not aware, you can easily move this knight somewhere, and then the whole position falls flat and the Zugzwang is gone forever, because you're not going to get into this again, and then you are likely to draw, because black will pick up this pawn with a king, And after you take this pawn, then the bishop just has to swap itself off for that pawn. So that can lead to a draw. So if you're not thinking and concentrating, it's very easy to move this knight away. If you also miss that it's actually covering 2 key squares. Or you might be in a time scramble and the king has just moved here and you just think he's attacking my knight. Let me move my knight quickly away. And then it all falls flat. All the hard work for nothing. Although some people sometimes end in these Zugzwang positions just by accident. They didn't even know that they were setting it up. All right, so that just covers a little bit of the Zugzwang in the endgames. This is normally where you will find it. And especially if you want to go and study this further, the concept, you can actually go look at Rook versus Bishop endgames. If you have the Rook and you're playing against the Bishop, there's a certain sequence that you have to find as well in order for Black to be in Zugzwang. Doesn't matter where he moves that Bishop, he is going to lose it or get checkmated. So just go check on some of those endgames as well. And then the Grandmasters will also tell you that it's normally in any pawn endgame, you'll find Zugzwang at some point. So when you go into an endgame as well, I never go into an endgame thinking that I have to obtain Zugzwang somewhere. I don't, honestly. But if you actually go look at your endgames, Zugzwang is actually a very central theme in endgames. And if you can look for that from the outset, it's easier to actually maybe achieve that than to just play move by move. Or if you forgot your theory in terms of bishop endgames and stuff, just look for the Zugzwang. All right, so that's the endgame. So I'm going to go into some middle game positions, if that is fine with you. Any questions so far or any comments? Are we good? Right. Yes, okay, we're good. All right, so I've chosen a few games. First of all, we're going to start with the Alekhine Nimzowitsch game. So I like this game a lot. I went through this game as a child. And it's a game that just stuck with me. I was always so impressed with the end. And the end is a Zugzwang position. So I thought we'll start with this one. And then after this, we'll go into the immortal evergreen game in terms of Zugzwang. This is not the normal immortal game that we all grew up with. I think by Anderson, this is a immortal Zugzwang game that they like to call. So I'm going to give you some notes from the that Kasparov made, but also that Alekhine made about this game. I always find it's interesting to follow some of the comments of the actual players that played the position, especially with the classical players. I find it interesting to know what they were thinking. And I think if we want to improve our chess, it's good to go through the games of the classical players, as you know, but to read the comments, because at the end of the day, you want to start thinking the way they think, not just analyzing the way they analyze, but to know what the emotional thoughts behind some of the moves were as well, because we all go through the emotional moments in the game, and it's good to see how they deal with it as well, or what they thought. Sometimes I think it's been a great attempt, and then Kasparov comes with a thought and say, no, it actually wasn't, and then explains it. So yeah, all right. So let's go through this. We will not go in detail through all the moves because our aim is to actually reach the Zugzwang position, but I find it's very useful to go through an actual game so that you can see how you actually got there. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing the opening. That is, as you know, a topic for another day, but we'll just do some general ones. So this is the French defense. Nimzowitsch is playing black, and Alekhine, world champion number 4, is playing with the white pieces. Alekhine's games are good for you to study if you're interested in playing some attacking chess, but also he's got really some good positional grounding as well, which I like to go through. Alekhine is one of the players' games who it's really nice to go through. Okay, so Alekhine chose knight c3. The winnow is on the board with bishop b4, and he advances the pawn to e5. Black reaches out with c5, normal French-looking move. Those of you that plays the French will know. And white plays bishop d2, knight e7, and an interesting knight b5 sortie there by white, which did not get any serious comment from anybody, not even Kasparov. I used to play the French, but I prefer the classical variation, and not I'm not a fan of bishop b4, although it's very attacking. So captures, and black castles. Right, so we out of the open, almost out. Oh yes, b6. Black is giving up on the center. You would have done better with a normal French-looking move like knight c6. But b6 is, I think, is the start of his trouble. Although b6 is played because a lot of players just want to get that bishop out, swap it off for a piece like the knight, or put it there and swap it off for this bishop if the knight moves away. But it's always, you need to play that soon. And there's only one variation where that actually works very well, and that's in the advanced variation, where black has a good idea in the opening to quickly get that bishop out. But here it's not a good idea. So white immediately expands on the king side. Black comes with his bishop, and white leaves it there because black will lose some moves to actually swap that knight off. So questions being asked for the knight. White decides to leave it there. And also if black captures this in the knight, then obviously if this pawn is standing there, then you have that square under eye. So white will not mind if we swap that off. Knight c6 and b4 is played. So this is what I like to read to you, what Alekhine actually said about this. He said, Tarash said this is a highly original move, b4. Kasparov says nowadays this is what we play. It's not funny at all. And Alekhine said that he says, to my mind, more surprising than the move is the fact that a player of Nimzovich's class, when adopting the plan that he started with playing b6, did not take this possibility into serious consideration. And I think this is where we can learn actually from the older players, is that I would have played b4 without thinking. I would just think, it just looks fine. And if I'm black, I'll just think, well, I must just look out for b5 so he doesn't fork the bishop and the knight. And I'll leave it at that and think there's nothing more to it. But they actually made quite a bit of a fuss with that move to say that it's actually a really good move to play. And black did not see that coming. So he then went on to take. He takes, and the bishop goes back. So he wasted the move earlier on. And then there's a lovely Steinitz knight standing on d6. And then black plays f5. Now f5 is not the greatest idea in the French if you do not have your dark square bishop. And normally we play f5 with the idea of that bishop. Let me show you. If it's still there, you move it here, and then you move it there, and then you move it out this way. Then f5 is a good idea. But now that bishop is here, so there's no way that it's going to go through the ranks to g6, for example. So f5 is not the greatest move, because white has shown with a pawn move here that he's going to attack on the king side. And this just makes it a bit easier for white. Okay, so let's get to the matter at heart, Zugzwang. So I'm going to just play through the middle game with a few moves. Either you capture or he captures you. So white rather captures the bishop, because if that bishop is off, the light squares become quite weak, and this bishop will actually be a good piece to have on the board. So queen takes, and the pawn moves up, and that bishop becomes quite strong now. Black has to develop those knights. The knights are peculiarly placed because of white's pawn center, and white castles, and h6 is played. This is now on move 10. Open file. Open file is only good if you can do something with it. Just putting a rook on the open file doesn't cut it for the rest of the game. So once you have that, you actually have to work on that on the open file. Black has to counter, and now white doubles up, and there we go. So now situation is happening here on c6. This is a square that we are looking at, and there's already a pin with a bishop. So black has difficulties. He is really missing that light square bishop at the moment. and that will be his downfall as well. Rook moves here with no future, and this is what impressed me the most of this game, is this configuration of the pieces here. Some of you will know that this is called Alekhine's gun. Alekhine's gun comes from this game. This is when you have the rooks doubled up in front of the queen and the queen is at the back. If you had the queen in front of the two rooks, it would not be called the Alekhine's gun, but Alekhine's gun is a queen behind the doubled rooks, and it's just one massive force going down the open file. So this is something that you can keep in mind as well for future reference. And this is why it impressed me as a youngster so much, this game, just because of Alekhine's gun.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and now see what happens. Bishop moves back. Because now in this situation, basically all the pieces are on their best squares. Yes, this knight is not really playing long, but it's got a very important function here because it's protecting that pawn. So these pieces are all on their best squares. And sometimes you have all your pieces on the best squares, and then you think by yourself, okay, now what? Because the c6 knight is adequately defended, and I have to do something about that now. But what do I do? So we have just played Rook to c8. Just want to follow here, and the bishop goes to a4. So Alekhine here says, and this is why I like to follow their own commentary on the games they play. He says the last link of the positional attack started by a5 when he made the move a5. In order to save the piece threatened by b5, if white plays now b5, black must sacrifice the b pawn. After this, he succeeds in protecting the important squares with his king, but must still resign as a consequence of complete Zugzwang. So that is in Alekhine's words. So he summed it up very accurately, and he also enjoyed saying that, I'm sure. So black has to play that. Otherwise, you simply just move pawn up to b5, and then the knight, once it moves, then the rook on c7 will just fall because you have 3 pieces attacking and just 2 defending. So to stop that, he has to play b5 himself, and then obviously you take it. The king, well, what else does he move? He's in Zugzwang. The bishop moves back because of the same situation that's going to happen. King still moves because now, once you play b5, he thinks that then he will have these 3 pieces defending the rook. So he added the king as a defender. So what happens is after that, white then played h4, putting black in Zugzwang, because none of these pieces can move. These cannot move. They are linked. That one also. None of them can move, which means only this pawn and this pawn can still move, and they're going to run out of moves. So in this position, you can play, for example, even you can play the queen there, but then you play that because one of those key pieces moved. If black plays h5 here, h4, h5, then you simply have, you're just waiting for black to run out of pawn moves, g6, g3, and now if that pawn moves up, obviously you capture it, and you will wait for that pawn to move, this one, you capture it, and then you will have to move one of these key pieces. Oops. And that would be game over. It's already game over. So after h4, this is the middle game position, but black is in complete Zugzwang, as Alekhine put it. And I think this is probably one of the best positions to show Zugzwang in the middle game. I think it really captures it very well. So this game has a few important concepts. You've got Alekhine's gun, and also you have to note how Alekhine took advantage of the center by pushing his pawns up. Black made a mistake. Nimzowitsch made a mistake with that bishop that he tried to swap off there on a6, that light square bishop with b6. b6 is not really a move that you make in the French defense early on. That bishop, you have to reconcile yourself with the fact it's either going to go to d7 or it's going to sit on c8 for quite a while, or there's that small little line that you can play where the bishop does go to a6, but that's very early. I think that's in on move 3 or 4 in one of the advanced variations. I like to play that because I just like to get that bishop off. But here, theory was not that evolved as far already. So yes, Alekhine's gun, and in this position with the Zugzwang is really something that stands out. So that's our start with the middle game positions, and then we're going to look at the evergreen game now. So with that one, we are following some notes as well. And small old little book called The Chess Teacher, if you haven't seen this one yet. And it's quite some cute remarks to this game. Right, so anything that stood out in that previous game for you, apart from Alekhine's gun and Zugzwang after h4? Anybody would like to make a comment on that game? No? Okay. Let's move on to this one, and then we'll take some comments after this game. So, because it's a very famous game, hopefully some of you saw this game already. And Nimzowitsch is playing with the black pieces. He's again on the receiving end of Zugzwang, and he is playing against Samish, Fritz Samish. So this was played in 1923. Actually, 7 years before the Alekhine game that we've just been through. So the concept was out there already. So it's a short game, only 25 moves, d4, knight f6. We're just going to run through the opening. Some normal piece development happening. Black is playing d5. Capture, capture. Bishop f4, black plays a6. Okay, so black with that move, obviously you're going to try and create, take some space up in on the queen side with a move like b5, and try to create play possibly down the c file. So white goes rook c1 already. There's an open file, and as we saw with Alekhine, if you have an open file, you should do something on the open file. Start putting a piece there, and then you need to build on that if that is going to be your intention. So Samish goes queen b3, because here you've got ideas now of obviously playing pawn to a4 because this bishop is not protected. Knight c6, developing move. He captures, and he plays h3. On move 14. So just going through the game. This is not really for discussion. And black plays f5. Okay, now he's trying to gain space on the queen side and on the king side. So we just need to keep an eye on that e6 pawn there at the back. And now white makes a bit of a faulty mistake. Sorry, actually black wins in this game. It goes queen d1. Okay, so now the reason for queen d1 is if you look closely at the position and you follow Philidor's principle, Philidor always said you have to keep an eye on the unprotected pieces. And here's an unprotected piece on h5. So obviously the queen is eyeing this piece here, and he's got some ideas. If he can move this pawn up, then the knight is being attacked. So queen comes back to d1. But if that's a good idea, we will see in time. He attacks the knight needs to decide going forward or backwards. And the knight obviously comes back, otherwise it will be lost. And black keeps building on his position. Looks like a decent move because the bishop would have been behind the pawn chain. So he brings the bishop out because there might be some work to do. And you obviously now pin this pawn on the rook. So looks like a good move to play. But now he moves the rook away, normal play, and then white lashes out with e4. Any thoughts on the move e4? Anyone?
I would think it looks very good if black has to move his knight back and we can go e5, but I'm slightly scared of some sacrifice or something.
Yes. True. True. So it looks fine, but now you have to analyze concretely to make sure that it is a good sacrifice that white is playing. That black might play if he captures that pawn, because black has a choice. He can either move the knight back and then you lose a piece in any event, because you'll just play e5 and take one of them. Or you can play what Nimzowitsch played, and he took there. Obviously, you do not take with this pawn here, because then your rook is still behind this pawn here. So it makes more sense to actually capture with that pawn, because then the rook is open. And what Nimzowitsch said after this game, he said that he thought the sacrifice is sound because he gets 2 pawns and he gets the 7th rank. And he said he thought that's a good deal. 2 pawns and the 7th rank for a knight. So that's creative thinking, and good if we can stretch our minds like that as well. So he took, and obviously white took as well, because that's the whole idea of queen to d1 right at the beginning, and he captures. Right, so it's not a comfortable position for white. For me, not, because the other thing that Nimzowitsch said is that white's queen side just seems a bit tangled up. And I kind of agree with that, because this knight is not in a good position as well. So white then decided to just play the queen there. You protect the bishop. So maybe you can play a3 and get the knight out somewhere there. And black obviously follows that principle. Once you have an open file, try and double on it, and then you need to infiltrate. So the king goes back because the bishop is pinned. He doesn't want that pinned. He goes back, and black here played rook f5. And with this, he announces Zugzwang as well. Queen has to check where she is going to go. The queen came back to e3. Black played bishop d3. And black followed up with h6. And this is the point where white actually resigned, because white is in Zugzwang. Okay, so let's look at this position. This game is a good game if you can go over it a few times. And some of these classical games is good to memorize off by heart. First of all, it's nice if you go to a chess tournament and you're analyzing with friends and you can actually show them a really extraordinary game off by heart. People will be impressed. Otherwise, it's really good because it cements patterns in your mind that you can relate to later on. Years ago, I saw a game that Nigel Short played, and he made this king march up the board. I was in, it was quite a long time ago, and I was so impressed by the game. I went through the game so many times. I cannot remember a huge chunk of the game, but I can remember that maneuver that he played. And sometimes it's just that maneuver that you want, because that's the thing that gets stuck in your mind and that you spot in a game of that you play yourself. So that's why it's good to go through them. It's impossible to remember all the moves unless you are, if you have really a great memory, but most of us do not have that, and that's okay, as long as you remember some of the chunks of a game that you can use. So let's see some of the permutations in this game. If he moves bishop f1, you have rook to f3 and the queen is trapped. Okay, queen can't go anywhere because you will capture the queen. So white cannot lose control of that square because the rook will come to it and trap the queen. So that's why bishop f1 does not work. Then you have another one. Let's move bishop c1. What happens after bishop c1? What can we play? Suddenly, the bishop interferes with the rook's defense there, and you'll just grab the knight. So the bishop also cannot move. So let's give white a pawn move. Let's say we play g4, because we also know this knight cannot move, right? So this knight can't move, this knight can't move, the bishop can't move, and this bishop can't move. So now we go to the pawn. See if the pawn moves. Again, we have that move there. And if the bishop captures, mate in 1, because we must always keep an eye on the entire board. Bishop d6 covers there. So let's give another move. Let's go and protect this pawn here. So we go king h2. Now we're going to try and see what black can do. Again, rook f3. And the queen is trapped again, because this time the bishop is pinned on the king. So king to h2 does not work. If you move the rook, obviously what will happen if we do this? The bishop will capture the rook. What happens if this rook moves? Say, for example, there. Again, you have rook here, and then the queen drops again. So white is officially in Zugzwang. You can maybe make a move like the pawn move, but if black makes a pawn move, then suddenly you need to make a move again, and at some point you're going to have to move one of these bigger pieces. And just like that Alekhine game at the beginning, where we had those pieces all standing there, if you can remember, one of them has to move. It's the same as here, right? Okay, it froze. Just hang on for it. I'm just waiting for my screen to connect. So in any event, while we wait for the screen to come, might want to connect again, you're going to run into trouble now, because these pieces has to move at some point, the bigger pieces. Now, in some of the books that you read, they actually say that people are assessing this position wrongly, and it's actually not Zugzwang. Those are people that are saying that black actually played so well that he cramped white's position completely. It's a blocked position, and that's why white loses, because he doesn't have any good moves left. But that is also the definition of Zugzwang, which means doesn't matter what move you make, you are going to lose. And in this case, you're going to lose a piece, or you're going to get checkmated. So this is the evergreen Zugzwang game. So it was played in 1923 between Samish and Nimzowitsch. So you can flag this one as well. So the Alekhine game and this game, the Samish game, are the two really important games you have to remember in terms of Zugzwang. My screen is not working with me at the moment. So I just want to try and see. As you can see, it's making this. I just want to give it a moment. Sorry. Can you still hear me, or is my internet connection gone?
We
Yeah,
can
your
still
internet
hear you fine.
I think it's just your browser that froze. Maybe just if you close it and reopen it.
Just see if it's responding. Okay, let's just do this again. It's easier, it's quicker. So I'm going to show you a game that is actually played by a South African, and Heidenfeld is his surname. They actually played this in Johannesburg some time ago. I'm just going to run through lead chess quickly. In 1937, okay, I'm almost there. Sorry, puzzles. I want to go to puzzles.
Yeah, I don't know how the others are finding it, but this Zugzwang stuff is making my head spin.
Zugzwang is not an easy topic. I remember since being a child, it's not an easy topic to work through. Let me just stop this here. it's not an easy topic to work through, Burton, because it's not the average attacking chess. It's attacking and defense in the same light, and I was fascinated actually when preparing for this that I didn't come across a single chapter that's just devoted to Zugzwang. I think it's an understudied thing, and people just throw it in as a same thing as a Zug and things like that. It's just like you should know it. Because I think there's no positions that you can actually aspire to actually achieve it. You basically have to be aware of the concept and try to create that concept in your own games. So that's the interesting part of that. I don't know what the other guys are thinking about the topic. Anyone? No?
You must probe them, Denise. You know, they yeah, so just point to one.
Shavala, I always hated it when I was in a training session and the coach or the presenter goes like, Denise, so what do you think? And then I'm like, I don't know. So I'd rather just sit back and absorb what everybody else is saying. But it's fine. This is a game you can't find on the database. I found it in a very, very old book. I've checked the Mega Database 2015 and the older versions and couldn't find it. Maybe you can, but I think it's probably because it was played in South Africa in 1937. We just didn't record our games at that stage. But this guy found it. So the move here that Heidenfeld played was Queen G3. And they say this is probably one of the best examples of a middle game Zugzwang, seeing that it doesn't really happen in the middle game. I tend to find it difficult to agree because I just love the previous two games because they're just so in your face Zugzwang. This one you actually have to look very carefully to see all the Zugzwang ideas. Now with Queen G3, there's a lot of different things that white can play. Okay, so we're going to run through them. There's quite a few. So let's say white goes King F1, because the thing that you want to get out of is this bishop. You must just look at this threat and keep this threat in mind. And then you just have to keep your eye on the rook that can come down. So those are the three things that stand out in this position. And white, if you look at it carefully, it's got an overloaded queen basically, because this queen, let me just get this gone here quickly. Making a lot of circles. The queen is an overworked piece at the moment because she has to look at the bishop. She has to protect here. She has to add protection there as well. And she's trying to take this pawn and she is trying to defend that as well. So the queen is doing a lot of work. And what we said right at the beginning with the theory section is that one thing that we're going to look for is overworked pieces because they also tend to lead to Zugzwang. So if the king goes to F1, that's easy to spot. We've got queen captures check, right? And white can't capture back because of the bishop. So if the king goes to F1, then obviously you have queen H2. You're going to come around and you want to checkmate here on H1 at the moment. So the queen has to capture. So you have an escape square for the king. But now we have check. King goes there. You check. Check. And you just come close and you grab the rook that's not protected. The rook is immobilized. Remember that as well. It's not doing anything. And black will win this. So black actually is in Zugzwang, white is in Zugzwang, doesn't matter what he plays. Let's say white plays rook F1. And then you have the protector of this pawn gone. So black can play take, mate. So the rook can't move either. Let's give white another move. Let's say he goes F5. Now black goes take it. And again, take. Now you can't mate on G2, but you can attack there. And if white captures your queen, you capture his queen, and you just a piece up with a pass pawn. So that is a clear win as well. So let's give him, so white is clearly in Zugzwang. He has no move. Let's play bishop b2. So we're removing the bishop. So there's no rook takes and the queen must take back. And then there's a mate there. So now black says, okay, now I go there. Goes there. You don't even take the bishop or anything. You just bring the pawn through. And now you take. And then you will win. So after that, let's give queen e1. Now you capture there. The rook cannot capture back because you will have again mate on g2. So queen there. And let's give him the last move, queen c1. That's the only other move that black and white can still play. Unless he's going to play a pawn move that will run out in any event as well. And now again you have d2. And after d2, this bishop is attacked by that queen and by the rook. And this queen is under attack as well. So the bishop will fall. Or the queen will fall. So the Heidenfeld game is a... I just want to get this... Yeah. The Heidenfeld game is a local example that was actually taken up in chess books across the world. So it's actually quite nice for South Africa to have that. One of our own people that actually played a really, really nice Zugzwang game, concept in the middle game. Right, so that was a nice one as well. So I'm checking our time. So I'm gonna, you will see that I've left quite a few examples for you there that you can play through. So I quickly want to show you just the last concept. You will find, you'll see that there's the Ivanchuk game. This is really a good game to go through. Lovely Zugzwang at the end. Ivanchuk played so well that Nikoli couldn't play anything at the end. He had 5 pieces and none of them could move. And that was on move, I didn't print that game for myself, but I think it's on move 30 odd. And all his pieces were stuck. They couldn't move. Really a nice one. And then you have the Levitsky game is a very nice one as well. The Dvoretsky game, most of you will know Dvoretsky as one of the best trainers in the world. Sadly passed away a few years ago. And this is one that you can go look through because they say this is probably one of the best Zugzwang games that you can find. So I went and found the best ones that's out there for you. So it's a nice collection for you to have. If you want to write them down, if you can't print it, write them down for yourself and play through it because you will not, you will really have to search far and wide to compile all of them together because it took me some time to get them all together. So they are here, so just copy them. And then you have a little section on Zugzwang because even you might coach maybe a junior player in future and then you can show them these things because it's easy games once you understand the concept. And then you've got a Lasker and Steinitz game, which is also a really nice game where Lasker plays Rook G8 and Steinitz had to resign because of Zugzwang. So I want to show you 2 themes quickly. And this is called Zugzwang Light. Now, I never knew that you get Zugzwang Light until I came across these 2 games. This normally happens in symmetrical openings. So say for example, you play C4, C5, G3, G6, Bishop G2, Bishop G6. And then both people want to play D5 and then they can't because the other guy's bishop will capture your pawn, things like that. So what Jonathan Rowson, he played for England for a long time, and he wrote those books, Chess for Zebras. He wrote some other books as well. They're here in the library. I can't remember them all. I didn't really play through them. Lyndon did. But I just want to show you the theme. So I'm just going to, this is symmetrical opening, G3, G6, Bishop G2, Bishop G6, and Knight C3, Knight C6, right. So we get these games. This was actually played between Hodgson and Arkell, and they are 2 of England's top grandmasters. So they're not fooling around here. This is actually a decent opening system. But Jonathan Rowson says that when you play white, obviously you have an extra move because you play first. And sometimes that extra move can be a burden because you want to play something, but doesn't matter with your best moves, black can play his best moves as well. Nothing that you play stops him from playing his best moves. And he called that Zugzwang light. So let me just show you the example. Okay, so he says all your natural moves allow black to play the moves he wants to. So what you want to play here is white wants to play, black wants to play d5. He wants to bring the bishop out to f5. White wants to play d4 and he wants to play the bishop out. But you can't do any of that because the moment you play d4, black will capture you. I mean, there's 3 pieces that can take you. So you need to prepare it. But while you are preparing it, black can play his best moves. So let me show you. So it goes a3 there, rook there. I'm just going to show you this. Okay, so now we reach the position where it says this is Zugzwang light. So if white wants to play d4, but to play d4, he's got to go knight f3 first so he can play d4. But while he does that, suddenly this bishop is not protecting there anymore, so black can go d5. So you are in Zugzwang light here because what you play is helping your opponent. So it's a very far-fetched concept of Zugzwang that you have to wrap your mind around. Don't worry if you're not fully getting it because it's not a real concept. But I thought I'll throw it in because we've all been in those positions in the opening where you want to play something, but in trying to make it happen, your opponent plays all the best moves for him. So you just never get there. So I just want to show you this. So he plays knight there, pawn. Now he gets it. Now black has to do that as well. And the symmetry just continues. So you can see it's basically, again, deadlock the same. Castles. And now he tries to throw it out a little bit, but it's still very much the same. And if you're like me, this will frustrate you very much so. So at some point, you need to break the symmetry to actually create initiative. Because if you, I always tell the small little children, if you're going to keep copycatting your opponent, he's going to checkmate you first. You can't copycat the checkmate because you'll be second. You'll be mated by that time. So it's important for you to break the symmetry at some point if your opponent plays like this. I'm going to go through the whole thing because I just wanted to show you at the beginning where you want to play certain moves like this. Bishops must come out. But for this to happen, you need to get the knights out first. And that's where the problem starts because now your opponent gets the same. His position does not worsen, which is the opposite of Zugzwang because it doesn't matter what you move, your position worsens. But with Zugzwang light, it's a light way of saying that doesn't matter what your opponent does, his position is just not worsening in the opening. This is the only time when you will see Zugzwang in the opening. So I just thought I'll point this out as a off the cuff thing. So I'll show you just here with Portage. You can go through the whole game later on. Portage is a really long game, so I'm not going to go through that. We're just going to go to move 14 at the most very quickly as well. So you can just look at this quickly. He's playing Tal. As you know, Tal is a very attacking player. So this was a draw at the end of the day, but let's just look at the opening quickly. Again, the symmetrical type system where one person has to break it. So small moves, but later on the other one just catches up with the same type stuff. So he plays b5. So he takes b5, b4. So he takes like what happened in that earlier game, d6. So it's the same, exactly the same again. Plays bishop d2, bishop d7. And queen c1, obviously eyeing that little square that we all know about. And black now plays rook c8. Now rook c8 breaks the symmetry because he's now showing that your queen is misplaced. Because there's issues down here, because if that knight moves, there's some issues because this knight can move here with a discovered attack on the queen with the rook. just things have possibilities. So Tal is the first one to say, I'm breaking the symmetry. So bishop there, he goes knight d4 with the idea of playing. You can even take rook takes here first and then play there with a check, and then you fork here. No? So, Alekhine, sorry. Sorry about that. Fast forward mode. He takes, you have to take. Captures, and then that falls. Now black has the initiative here because he broke this symmetry. So it's just something that you need to be aware of. It's not fixed in any stone in terms of Zugzwang, but it is something that you can keep in mind, because although there's still symmetry, you need to look for a break in the symmetry, because at some point, if you follow symmetrical opening lines, you're going to get to a position where you can't continue doing that, because you're going to find yourself in a Zugzwang in the opening, where you actually have to make a move. You want to make it, but in order to make that, you have to make a move that gives advantage to your opponent, if that makes sense. So you can just wrap your mind around that. It's an advanced concept, but I'm throwing it in there so you are aware of it. So if you cover it maybe again with somebody, then you know about that concept and you can go into it in more detail. You don't find these positions quite easily, but if you play the English opening, the symmetrical English, if that's one of your openings, maybe you can go look at that and just know for yourself that you have to be wary of that when you do your transition from opening to middle game, so you don't get stuck in that. All right, so I have given you 11 training positions that you can go through in your own time. I have put the solution on as well. So it's for training. You'll see the first few positions are really easy. If you've concentrated today, they are really easy. It's 1-star positions. And then they go into 2-star. They might look a bit easy, but some of the ones in the later stages are not that easy. So try and have a good think about that. Don't look at the solution when you do them. Cover it up for yourself, because you know it's here on the right-hand side of your screen, and see what you can do with that. You're more than welcome to contact me at any time if you have questions about Zugzwang. Maybe you're very interested in the topic and you want more games of it. I'm happy to go look for more games for you and send it to you. It's important that when you do start studying a topic, that you can actually delve into it a little bit. Don't just do it once off. I'll take a Saturday and look a little bit at Zugzwang or long distance opposition or whatever topic you choose, but rather take a week or two and just do that. Because in that way you also form new pathways in your brain. That's now the psychologist in me speaking. And once you start opening up those connections, it's pathways that are there, but you have to go through it quite often to actually cement it and open it so that you know it's there. You might not know it's there, but you've already worked with those pathways in your brain. So the more you expose yourself to it, the better. So that's from my side in terms of Zugzwang. I don't know if any of you maybe have any questions or any comments that you want to put forward. We have about a minute left.
Yeah, Denise, just the Lichess study. I just tried to go into it, and I saw that it was still on private. To be able to just make it accessible.
Yes, I would. Yeah, I wanted to know from Andrew earlier on, and he said, I think you would have explained to me later on today who I must share it with.
Okay, yeah, maybe my cooking assistant.
There where it says visibility, invite only, you just set that to unlisted or public.
Okay, so then anybody can go through it.
Yeah, unlisted is anyone with the link, public is anyone who searches for it will find it.
Okay, I've just made it unlisted, so you can find it.
That's awesome, thank you.
Okay, so do you need to go into my handle to go get it? Do you know where to find it?
Yeah, you can just share that Lichess link in the Zoom chat. That would be preferable.
Okay, let me do that quickly. Copy. Where's the chat? There's a chat. So I'm just going to paste it here for you. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Is
much.
that the one?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Mm.
Anybody has any questions or any thoughts on the topic? Something that maybe you thought of while looking at it? Is it a difficult topic?
We'll ask Raun to comment.
Say again?
Raun, we'll ask Raun to comment. Raun, how did you find it?
You want me to comment? I think it's a very complicated topic and definitely need to work through it yourself. It's
Mm.
definitely for the super advanced more than the advanced.
But you will be amazed how often you actually find Zugzwang in your own games. And I think when you do game analysis of your own games after a tournament, have a look at your end game specifically to see if there were moments of Zugzwang, because this is where you actually gain in strength if you start looking for these concepts and not wait for it once you reach a more advanced level. Because the moment you are aware of a theme like this one and you start looking for it, you incorporate immediately into your own chess, and that's where you start gaining rating and strength as well. So you are absolutely right. You have to go sit and study this quietly and make it your own. That's the only way it sinks in truly. It's like any other endgame theme. You can't just look at a few games and go like, okay, now I know, I'm sorted. This is an introduction to Zugzwang. Your task is now to go find this in your own games and go look for it and become aware of it. Because once you are aware of it and you start looking for it, you will pick it up in games that you actually play. So you don't end up on the receiving end of it as well.
Yeah, no, we definitely will ask Michael to share the recording link, because I think must go watch this lecture maybe 2 or 3 times to understand it fully.
Yeah, it's not, I'm not gonna lie, it's not an easy topic. Even, you know, in all the training that I've done with the Olympiad squads and grandmasters that sat with us, nobody ever touched on Zugzwang. It is not a topic that people coach on. They just don't. I've never sat in a coaching where we discussed Zugzwang for more than 5 minutes. It's just not done. That's why it's a foreign thing. And it's good if you're exposed to an hour and a half of this. Now you just need to take it further and work with the ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much, Denise. I think that, you know, it was very, very, very educational. Yeah, I think we all need to, as I said, go and reflect on this again, and yeah, it open my eyes certainly in terms of looking at it. Zugzwang.
Yeah, I think it's a topic that you become aware of, and now you just need to go work with it. You'll see that I think a good place for you to start would be to actually do the training positions. There's 11 of them. Do them as tactics, because they're really not that difficult. If you spotted those first ones, you will spot these ones as well. If you do tactics often, you'll find them. And then after that, go through the games that are listed there that we haven't done today. So I've put some extra ones there so that you can have something to go look at. And then you go look at those games that we just did. And you go over that as well. That would be the best place to start. These are some of your most basic endgame positions, Zugzwang positions, and you'll find even more of these ones once you start looking at corresponding squares and things like that. That becomes complicated, especially when they start numbering the little squares. They've lost me completely. I prefer to look at it from this point of view, where it's more general, and you can rather work with the idea. That's the important thing. So you'll find it in normal pawn endgames, just king and pawn. You'll find Zugzwang there. So you can also look at that. So yeah, that's all from my side. Any more questions, maybe?
I think Kutswa's got a question there. Kutswa?
No, I don't have a question. Just want to say thank you.
That's a pleasure.
Yes.
Okay,
I enjoyed it. Yeah,
I
good
do
luck.
have a question if I can ask that quickly.
Yes.
Do you have any of your own games that we could find online where you've had Zugzwang themes and that occurring?
I cannot tell you off the top of my head. I will have to go look myself. Because when I did this, I actually realized I've never actually went to look for Zugzwang, but I know I have played games where I put my opponents in Zugzwang because it happens in the end game. So I actually have to go do work on this myself. I've realized that as I went through this, I thought, Denise, you haven't done this. But why? Because no coach has ever told me to go do this. I haven't been aware of actually go look for Zugzwang. So that's a bit of a gap there that I actually have to attend to. So yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are we ending here? What's the plan further? Because
Okay,
yeah,
if there's no more questions, we'll call it then. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for the very instructive lecture. Have a good
that's a
evening.
pleasure. And thanks for everybody for being here. It was great. Hope to see you again soon.